Okay, everyone, I want to welcome you to the fall 2025 edition of the CRD1, the class called CRD, Community Regional Development. The session that we have today is our CRD alumni panel. Alumni. So we're excited to have four esteemed alumni from the Community Regional Development. They're here. I'm excited to welcome them. My name is Ryan Galt. I'm a professor in CRD and also the director of the All Sustainability Institute here at UT-Davis. With our four alumni joining us, I want to say thank you for being here. And you all have busy work schedules, and so it's really, really great for you all to be able to take the time out and come share your wisdom and experiences with everyone here. So I really want to say thank you. It means a lot to me that you're here. And this will be essentially a facilitated conversation. I'll be asking you questions, and if the idea is to everyone to know to kind of share your experiences, and then at the end we'll be able to open up to the audience. I think if we have time. And then Alex does have to be able to go on the warning. So in terms of intros, I'd love to hear for everyone your names, your year you graduated, the organization or business you work for now, kind of your title or position there, and then a little bit about like your day to day. That would be the intro, and then we'll go into half of the questions from there. So, Alex, do you want us to do that?
So, hi, my name is Alex Unitas. I'm the TA for this class, so like everyone knows me. I work for Dr. Galt. I am a TA, but also do research with Dr. Ann Bister at the Bister Lab, like looking at the impact of agriculture technology on kind of rural capital, workforce systems, and just overall rural development. And I graduated last year, so 2025. And my normal kind of day-to-day life is, because I'm currently a graduate student in community development, it feels like a continuation of just CRD program, just more advanced, working on longer papers, more advanced skills, quantitative methods, qualitative methods, kind of just developing myself better as like a community developer, but also hoping to go into academia, so kind of learning more of those skills. And
hello everyone, my name is Braulio Gonzalez. I graduated in 2023. Currently work at a company called Urban Capital LLC. I'm the director of operations for the company. So what does a day in the life of me look like? Well, first of all, what is a REIT Capital? We're a real estate developer. We don't know what a real estate developer does. We find land, we build buildings, and we try to positively impact the community. So I wear many hats in my job. Just today I was at an active property, I was at a construction site, and I was working with a designer just this morning starting at 8 a.m. And now I'm here at UT-Davis. So day in the life of me, it just depends on the day, the project. In this field, you wear many hats, but I'll pass it on to someone who also wears lots of hats.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Portier. I work for the city of Woodland, which is just like 20 minutes north of it. I work in our city manager's office, which covers equity, engagement, economy, and environment. My role specifically is business and community engagement. And yeah, like Rolo said, I wear a lot of hats. And so day to day really depends on the time of the year, the project that I'm working on, but a lot of direct one-to-one communication with businesses. I also work a little bit in our planning department, so doing some groundwork with processing permits and entitlements. I do a lot of research at like a high level for the city manager about like forward-thinking policies that we want to implement. Writing policies, writing staff reports if we have to take items to council. I also do a lot of sustainability work, so our climate action plan, and just a lot of like regional partnerships with a variety of different organizations and community-based efforts to support the Woodland community. And I graduated in 2022. Good say.
Well, I'm the older of the bunch, apparently. Hi, everyone. I'm Liliana Chavez. I'm the director of our programs at California Coalition for Rural Housing. I graduated CRD in 2012. So 10 plus whatever years, don't make math. I'm not in math degree, obviously. So director of our program. So I help out with tribal engagement and education under the nonprofit of CCRH. That was created with the professor Rob Wiener. Some of you may know him. And so I work with pretty much a lot of what y'all represent here. So I work with the state, with nonprofit developers, housing developers, any kind of funders who are looking to engage with tribes. At the same time, we educate all those entities on how to work with tribal governments and sovereign nations here in California. And we provide technical assistance. I do the policy work and also research. And now we're trying to integrate that tribal piece into our internship program. So I'm head of all of that. And I've been with CRH now for 4 years. Before that, I've done community organizing, youth development, in farm worker rights, immigration rights for quite some time now as well. And that's all being lumped in with what I'm doing right now. I'm also being transitioned into our strategic planning to help expand a little bit more our advocacy and TA and training to our rural communities, just like our name has, because most of our tribes are in rural communities, but we started as a farm worker organization. And so doing a little bit of all of that. So my day-to-day is a little bit different. It all depends on what's needed at the time. So thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for me. Cool. Hey, thank you all. The first question I have for you, and if you want to just kind of go down the line, I think that's fine. So looking back at your experience in CRD and at UC Davis, what was the most important experience that you had while you were here?
I think it would be definitely kind of harnessing the skills that you have and kind of understanding where you're from and using the environment you grew up and everything that's influenced your upbringing and just bringing that to the table when you're in CRD. Because when we're looking at communities, you grew up on one for most of your life before you came here to UC Davis. And I think I took, I think it was CRD 140 with Dr. Kenny, who's a lot of here. I remember I submitted a paper where I was talking about a company in my local community, and I was talking about agriculture and how, like, it was like, I'm not into agriculture that much, but I just talking about, like, my natural, like, upbringing and my direct experience with, like, agriculture, just my parents being farm workers. And I submitted a paper, and he was like, go to the writing center. You could always write better. And I kind of was like, oh, I thought I wrote pretty well. This was my freshman year. And then the next week, he like told me to stay after class, and he was like, do you want to work on this agriculture research like project that I'm doing? And I'm like, sure, I have no experience in this. And I think it's just being able to like bring in what you have that can't teach, and it's just like that lived experience. And I think bringing that always to the table in CRD, and anytime you're doing a research project, being able to relate it to something that you've gone through to kind of give understanding to your like life experiences, because like everyone here has a unique lived experience. I think just that probably the biggest, most influential thing of the opportunity in Davis is just realizing that like I have this own unique, lived experience coming from a rural community, and I think always mentioning that, always bringing it, and always using that to kind of inform my the way I just like use my education. I think that's definitely probably a great lesson I learned in CRD.
So you said, what's the one thing, right? And
You can do one.
yeah, I think it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to pin down one example of the thing that has impacted me the most. I think the first one was the community that you build within yourselves in the classroom, meeting your peers with professors. That's the number one thing. I mean, like Amanda, we've still kept in touch after these years. We were classmates in CRD. A lot of people that I work with, we have council members in Sacramento that are CRD alum. One of the young gals that I just recently hired onto the team, she's a CRD alum. So really forming a connection with your peers and your classmates, especially if you all are CRD majors. Even if you're not a CRD major and you're in this class, connect with the people in your major, and that will help you out in the long run. Take it seriously, take your school seriously. That's your job right now to graduate. So that's number one, building that connection, not only with your peers, but with your professors. Similarly to Alex. Similarly to Alex, Professor Kenny also sent me to the writing center. Kenny and I hung out afterward, and he's helped me navigate some of this world as well. So generally, build your own community. You're learning about community, build your own community. That's what I would say. And then just on the more technical side, on the CRD side, the jargon, like understanding basic concepts, like what does sprawl mean? What does gentrification actually mean, or displacement? Just certain terms that will help you in the long run, depending on the career that you want to get into.
I think the one thing that was really, really impactful for me that kind of spiraled into a lot of other things is I work on a research paper with Professor Noli Brazil, and we looked at gentrification and place-based economic development programs and how those interacted across California cities. And I mean, the research component itself was really, really challenging, but it also like unlocked all of these new things that I didn't even understand about the academic world. And it then made me a better student because I was able to have this like newfound respect for all of these hundreds of research papers that your professors assign you to read all the time. And I feel like knowing how I navigated that on the back end as a researcher made me a better student and made me a better writer and made me a better reader. And then also, I had to take that paper and present it at like the research conference that they do here for undergraduates. And that really helped my public speaking and learning how to translate those complex topics and really, really complex statistical data into something that anyone could understand. Just helped me in so many different ways that I now take into my work. And I realized like, as I was going through CRD, you become a really good writer and a really good reader automatically just through the nature of the work that you do. But once I had this experience doing research on the back end, I feel like it was a new level of learning that I didn't have before. And so I highly recommend if you ever get the opportunity to do any sort of research or just really take your research seriously when you're doing your own projects that you get assigned in CRD. I just think unlocking that like deeper level of learning has completely transformed how I view really the world and like how we are navigating it. So that was my most impactful experience.
Well, I'm interpreting that question as like what I miss out of all this because it's been so long. Honestly, like the discourse that happens naturally in any kind of class, right? Once you get into a job, you'll be surprised how little opportunities you have to have that moment of like back and forth and really sharing ideas. And not just ideas, but conflict, right? And being able to like put that in this setting and being able to like bounce ideas in a manner that you have a facilitator, which is automatically done with the professor, is a great opportunity. I really honestly miss that because there's some days that I'm just like, where's Professor Galt to help me with this? And so yeah, I honestly miss those moments because I do remember, especially here in CRD, you know, you talk about social justice, you talk about social dynamics, you talk about things that are happening to yourself, to the world, to your environment, and just being able to process that. And once you start working, you find yourself like not being able to have that unless you're already like in a club and you have your own little groups and stuff like that. But it's not in an academic setting, right? So I definitely miss that. Another thing, memorable thing for me, and I still talk about it to this day, is going in 2010 when the World Cup was in South Africa, and we went. What's his name? Christopher.
Would have been.
Yes. So we went out to South Africa and went out to those areas that were being pushed out because they were building the stadiums for the World Cup, right? And being able to see the impact that this. I love soccer, so I follow the World Cup, and to be able to see the counter to all that, like, just shocked my world. And it's been such a impactful experience that anytime I hear the World Cup is coming in LA next year, 2026. So I'm just like thinking of like, okay, who's going to be impacted, right? It happened the same thing when it was in all these other countries. So anyway, so that has been revolutionary for me. I still love soccer. Soccer is not the bad thing here. It's just how these corporations, these are the companies kind of interpret that and manipulate it for their own benefit. So that's what I took out of that. And what else was?
Make sure we can do that. The next question I have for you is kind of which skills, area of knowledge, and methods have been most useful for you in your both academic but also your professional career?
I wouldn't say I have that like extensive professional career, but I think definitely the writing. And I know it gets really annoying, but I think just being able to develop like critical thinking, and also I think CRD, especially a lot of classes, make you be able to like create themes throughout everything you've learned, because CRD builds on top of each other. You're going to notice in CRD, once you go into the upper dis, like oh, we're talking about Marx again, we're talking about, environmental justice, we're talking about all these like general same kind of frameworks and giving them, focusing on little niche things. But I think one of the biggest skills I've learned, especially now doing research and writing a research paper right now, is that I hope to publish is just like literature review. They're so difficult to do. And I think now reading them, it just makes everything easier. Like you say, it just, the amount of times you're writing and reading, it just gets easier over time. So I think in academia, it's just like the amount of like actual work you're just doing. We just develop those skills over time. Professionally, I think one thing I really love about CRD is it just always makes you talk to people who you don't kind of want to talk to and you don't know. So even for CRD1, you have to go to a community council, like any council meeting, which I think is a really unique thing to do in just any class. I don't think any class that makes you go to a city council meeting. Also, sometimes you have to interview people for certain CRD classes. So I think just that, like, always going out and knowing and getting a different perspective. Like, you always read this thing in a paper, but you want to learn more about it. So you go and reach out to someone who might be directly impacted by that. And I think that's one of the biggest skills I learned from CRD is never take everything at full face value and always just be doing the extra work you need to do to make sure you're doing due diligence on like your part.
Well, yeah, that's a great response. I'm going to follow up a little bit on what he said. Writing, I think it sucks when you have to write a 16-page paper or a 20-page paper, whatever it is. But honestly, if I wouldn't have wrote all those papers, I wouldn't be as an effective communicator as I am right now. Orally, just written language, whatever it is, I'm pretty comfortable in the space of conveying information now. And I thank CRD partly because they assign you a bunch of assignments that you have to get done in a 10-week quarter. And, you got a social life. Maybe you have some stuff going on at home, but you still got to get your work done. On the academic side, I would say that I chose CRD. I came in as an econ major, and I knew I wanted a BS, but I knew I wasn't strong at math, and I knew I wanted to impact my community, positively. So I was like, okay, I want a BS, but I'm not strong at math. I'm an econ major. Community regional development, I think it bridges the gap because while we do qualitative and quantitative research, I feel like it's an even mix and you're not going to get weeded out if you're not like, math is not your strong suit, So that's on the academic side. On the professional side, which I've been fully entrenched now, like going on 4 years straight real estate development, you're going to notice that, it depends the type of field that you go to. Because if you're in the public sector, it might be a little bit different than the private sector. I'm in the private sector. So with us, it's like you got to get straight to the point. If you're talking to CEOs and you're talking to, mayors or whatever, then you got to be, important people just want to know straight to the point, no fluff, which is a little different than a 16-page paper. But what you're able to do after you write so much is that you know how to condense the information now to what really matters. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think, is really understanding the complexities of community. Like, for example, what I do for work, we go look at land, for example. If my boss tells me, Braulio, we want to look at a project in Modesto, go find a piece of land that you think we could build something on. You have to think, okay, well, this is just an empty piece of land, but it's not. There's various factors to a community. What's around? I remember when I was doing a tax credit application. Y'all probably won't know what that is. If you do, props to you. But it's essentially you fill out an application for the state to pursue tax credit funds to build a project. So we were requesting something like, it was a 92-unit project in Richmond. We were requesting like $50 million from the state. And I used a lot of the research methods that I learned through Noli Brazil's class when we took the art class, or even CRD 118 with Professor Kenny. A lot of those research methods, they're very important because unlike school where you're going to get graded and you'll have some feedback of like, oh, maybe you can improve this. In the real world, there is no helper. The person that you're submitting to oftentimes is just, well, at least in my case, like you're submitting for 50 mil, they're going to scrutinize your application pretty well. And, when they come back to you, they're not going to say, hey, you could change this. No, you want to make sure you get it right on the first time. And that's where really honing in your skills of like, I'll give you an example. I had an intern last year who they were doing research, but they were doing the very bare minimum. And that doesn't cut it in the real world, especially when you're trying to move up in the professional world. Like, just surface level research is not going to do it. You really have to go above and beyond, call people, email people. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. But that's just my experience in the professional world. And writing and speaking, use those. Yes.
Yeah, I just 1,000 times emphasis writing. I can't believe how many words people use that are just not necessary and tend to clutter really the work that you do and the point that you want to get across. I write a lot of staff reports, and sometimes for staff report, it's like to council when you bring an item, which is anything, a policy decision, a budget request, or anything that needs approval from city council. You have to write a staff report, which gives staff perspective on why the city council should move this item forward. And typically the combination of all of these documents can be up to hundreds of pages for a Tuesday night council meeting. And so I try to, make it as minimal as possible. What information do they need to know? And that comes from writing hundreds of pages of research in the CRD major. I remember I looked back at my first essays probably in this class, and I used so many words that just did not need to be there in every single sentence. And I remember stressing about the page limit at that time. And so just realizing the journey you'll take as a writer in the next 4 years, just really hone in on that and struggle with it and challenge yourself to really look at the words you're using. And then I actually really like math. So my brain is very math oriented, very data oriented. And so I got a statistics minor during my time at UC Davis as well. So if anyone is really interested in the data side of CRD, I think there's a path that you can incorporate a lot of data and data analysis in CRD that is not necessarily a specific track that CRD offers. But I think I worked with my professor mentor person to say, hey, these classes are very data focused, but here's how I think they tie into the social policy and social research. Can I use these towards my CRD degree? And they were really helpful and accommodating. So if you feel like you want to pursue something more quantitative, I highly recommend that. And I'd be happy to talk to anyone who's more interested in the data stats side of CRD, because that is really important. And if you do want to go to school beyond this, especially with a research lens, stats is, the fundamental math that you're going to use. And I eventually want to go back. I don't really use it in my work now, but one day, hopefully that will pay off.
I very much echo what everyone else is saying in regards to writing. You're in a Bachelor of Science, and so it does tackle, you have to write it and be able to express it in some way that your audience is going to take it, right? But I will add to what everyone is saying in regards to being involved with your community and whatever community that is. I've been in community organizing and community development long enough to understand that the realities are always changing. And as much as the data or the writing that has happened 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, may be a little bit differently, and there may be nuances that can only be seen if you are involved in the community. And that's very much true if you are going to be a policy writer, if you're going to be working for a city, if you're going to be a developer, if you're going to be doing all these things, and you're just hey, my community needs this. And it's just does your community really need that? And if you're disconnected from all of that, then you're making solutions based on something from 10 years ago that is not quite needed now. And I know this might be something very obvious to y'all because you're CRD, and I'm assuming that y'all are here for social justice or for your own kind of purposes. But now once you start applying these tools, these kinds of frameworks that are theorized in these classrooms, and you're trying to put it into the real world, how many people are disconnected from the realities of the communities that they're trying to hone? And I'm saying this only because I work with tribes, and if that has been such a focus of how tribes are misinterpreted, misunderstood, or just aren't even included. And so having to tell legislators, telling housing developers, telling funders, one, that tribes still exist, two, that they're in your back door, and really having to educate folks, having to bring them into the reality is such a fun journey with them at times. And so staying involved in your community, again, whatever that is going to be helpful in whatever pathway you all want to get into, whether that be policy, writing, data, or, just being involved in some sense.
Good job. Next question I have for you is, it's kind of the question of the day in a way. How do you view generative AI, and like how does it impact your job, if at all?
Oh my God, let's not get there.
You don't have the answer. I'm just curious. You could say that. Oh, that's just fine. But I'm just curious, as someone who's in the job market for a long time, not on the job market now, but a lot of the students today are seeing these reports that job losses and or like job transformation. So I want to get your take at more recent graduates than I am.
Well, I think I have a very different perspective, because I think AI is such a big issue that I just generally do my research, like the impact of AI in S culture, and looking at like just generally generative AI, and like when you're betting too much on AI blowing up and you don't get the capital and then it just falls apart. Kind of looking at that perspective, but I think generally looking at AI within the labor market and how its impact on like job polarization and kind of the losing of skills that we need as kind of just general human beings, but also skills that just allow us critical analysis. I do think in the current market, I think AI is just generally being embraced more now. So I think there has to be a realization that I think knowing how to use AI effectively, understanding that there's common pitfalls with it. Also, I think just generally AI doesn't have to be in everything. So I think being able to use it critically, and I think be able to use it when you need to, but not using it always. Like again, if you could not use it, then don't use it. I think there's great ways to use it to help, whether that's like maybe you're stuck on art coding, I do art in some aspects, but I think generally for writing, I just struggle seeing the purpose of it. But I think just in academia, because of how anti-AI it is here, I really don't see it used in my field at all. But just thinking of it more as someone who researches the impact of AI, and also just looking at the environmental impacts on data centers, on local communities. I think it's just being really critical of how much AI is being pushed and why is it being pushed. Because you could go on Instagram and you're seeing AI in every ad and seeing why are so many people pushing AI, and what does this mean for our society and for my jobs? Yeah.
House very long answer. I think on the macroeconomic sense, I definitely agree that the big 7 companies in AI right now, they're holding up the S&P 500. There possibly could be a bubble, hence causing a lot of job uncertainty, especially for those coming out of college. That's the macroeconomic. Some of the biggest minds in the world can't solve that answer. I can't solve that answer. I'll let you know how I use AI, though, and how it's impacted me and my job. So my career path has been a little bit different. I've always worked at either a small company or a startup. Essentially, the only role that I've encountered is being the CEO's number 2. So I haven't had to go through a corporate per se job onboarding. So I just want to say that because I don't have that experience and I don't want to discount or discredit any lived experiences. However, I will say that AI will never have a personality that you could bring to the table. It will never have the work ethic that a human can bring to the table. And if you guys go to an employer, or y'all go to an employer and, show that you want to show up, add value. That's the key. When you go into the labor force, you need to find a way to add value. If you're not adding value, why would they hire you? That's just the reality of the world. So that's what I would say. Don't be scared of, obviously there is an imminent threat in a more larger scale, but don't be scared of the AI boom. Put your head down, study hard, get internships, start working now. That way you build up your resume, and when you actually graduate, you get a job. For me, when I got my first job, I'll tell you guys, I got it at a bar. I was chatting with a guy at a bar, and I was like, "Oh, you're a real estate developer." Started chatting it up. "Oh, I'm in CRD." Be the best at speaking about yourself and selling yourself. If you could do that, you're going to beat AI. However, now, when it comes to real life and my everyday, I love using AI. Why? Because it saves me a lot of time. Time is very precious to me, and I don't have a lot of it. We all share the same 24 hours, but the more you understand that time is the most valuable thing that you have, the quicker you'll succeed. So for me, it's like, okay, I have a pro forma to do. I have a cash flow analysis to do. I have maybe some market analysis I have to do on this side, and maybe I have to do some sales on this side. Okay, how do I tackle that? Well, I'm just one person. I like to get my ideas. If I'm stuck, I'll type something into ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm trying to build 50 units in Sacramento in this area. What's the zoning and blah, blah, blah. I could look into the zoning code, and I will do that to do my due diligence after, because you don't want to just blindly trust AI. It's a good reference point, though. Even at Davis, I took a Soch class my last quarter, that the whole class, we have to do all of our assignments through AI. It was interesting. It was the weirdest and coolest class I ever had. But if you're going to use AI, understand how to use AI. You actually have to train the thing and know how to use it for your benefit. So that's what I will say. It's also good, if you're stuck, for example, if you're stuck on an Excel sheet, like you said, if you're doing R or some type of advanced coding or financial analysis, then, AI is a good tool to use. But remember, it's a tool. Don't go there step one. If you're writing your paper, write your paper. Don't let AI write your paper. One, because you'll get caught and go to OSSJ or whatever it is. And two, is because you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're not, y'all are paying to be here. Use that investment and use your time wisely. But AI, generally a good thing. There should be some barriers around it, and we'll see what happens.
On a personal and philosophical level, I'm very skeptical of AI, and I have a lot of conversations with my coworkers about it because working for a local government, we are a very short-staffed agency, and there are a lot of ways that AI can be extremely useful and beneficial, as Braulio was saying, with kind of efficiency and research-oriented tasks. But in its current state, it's very unruly. We don't have any policies from the city's perspective. There's no boundaries. There's really no standard for what a professional in a government can use it for at its current state. And so it's really up to the individual of their kind of ethical and moral boundaries of what they want to use it for. And so philosophically, I think about we're representing to the public. If I'm using AI to write a staff report and that's coming from staff, is that really something that's ethical to put that out for the public when it was written by ChatGPT? And so I think until we reach a state where there's some sort of policy analysis of how we can integrate that into local governments, I really treat it lightly and delicately. I use it for kind of accuracy analysis. So if I write, say, a message to businesses, I'm sending it out to 700 people who are very important to the community, and I want to make sure that my spelling or whatever is right. And I say specifically, I'm please don't copy edit my language. I want it to sound like me, but can you read this for accuracy? And sometimes it'll point out, if I had a date wrong or something like that I copied from a past email. In that perspective, it's really useful. Something else I find it useful for, I ask for in government. A lot of the times for smaller size cities, mid-sized cities, we use other cities as examples for policy and how we want to move programs forward. So I'll say, hey, recently I have been trying to pass a entertainment zone in Woodland, which is an area where you can drink alcohol outside during special events. It was just approved from a Senate bill this past year, and so it's very new. And so I asked ChatGPT, hey, can you look what cities have explored this and specifically point me to their council items? I don't want your summary of what you think they've done. I want to read their staff reports. And so in 5 seconds, they were able to pull 10 cities across California that would have taken me 30 minutes probably to Google. And so in that case, I think there's really an efficiency from a staff perspective that can save taxpayer dollars and really free up our time to support the community. But like I said, there's no policy around it. Our city council hasn't mentioned anything. Our IT staff haven't mentioned anything. So I don't know in its current form, what something needs to happen to get to a state where there's really a regulation and boundary for staff to be able to use this in a way that's ethical and helpful to the community. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, those are very good points. So I'm just curious also, like, why you're asking this question, but you can finish that up. So how I use AI in my work is very much how you use it. It's just to kind of proofread. I do communicate with a lot of legislators and their staff, so I have to make sure that it's passive aggressive and diplomatic. And so that's not my tone of voice typically. It's very much direct, and so I have to be like, hey, ChatGPT, can you make this softer? And that's what I use it primarily for. Very much in the philosophical foundational piece of how AI gets created. The fact that it's basically created from stolen and compromised data, it doesn't quite sit well with me. And the fact that there isn't much of a policy or procedure on it. And then whatever data you're putting into it is going to then regurgitate to someone else, right? And so the ethics of it all, it doesn't quite sit well with me. And this is going back just to the work that I do with, not just with the tribes, but with BIPOC communities, that most of our work does get taken and does get taken advantage from us for someone else's benefit. And so like that level of ethical practices doesn't sit well for me when it comes to AI. Now, to all the points that y'all are saying in regards to it's a tool, yes, it's a tool. And just like anything in your toolbox, use it when it's needed. And you use it appropriately as well. So whatever you need it for that part, just being conscious of where it's at. And being conscious of how it's also affecting you. There's a lot more research now coming out on how there's like some kind of brain chemistry that changes the more you use AI. So it's a tool that's going to affect you, just like our social media, just like our phones, just like all these electronics and devices that rob us from our own brainwaves. So there's a lot that is being studied, but I am taking it very delicately. I know it's out there. And there's just as much as there's good things to it, there's a lot of bad things to it. And so having to figure out what you're willing to tolerate and going from there. Why did you ask that?
I have been extremely disappointed when I try to use it. It just doesn't do the things that I would like it to do. I feel like I could just do things better. And clearly, I feel like it could save me time, but outsourcing that portion of my brain is not something I'm willing to do.
Yeah.
So essentially I just don't use it because I don't.
Yeah.
I found that it just lies to me a lot, and
It's wrong.
yeah. I find it mostly useless, and then I find it less than useless, which is more harmful. Personally, that just.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, I guess yeah. So anyway, there's a lot more there, but I want to make sure.
No,
I'm getting the questions asked of you too. So the big one. What do you know now that you wish you had known when you were at the CRD peak?
Family. Yeah, when Ryan sent over the questions, I was like, damn, what do I use that I learned in school in my actual career now? And I think the fundamentals, like the concepts of what goes into a community, it's kind of hard because we're not in I'm not in the, for example, a nonprofit, right? We're a for-profit company, but we have a social responsibility as capitalists or developers to positively affect the community. So what does that mean? You have to understand how things relate to each other, the interconnectivity between the community, a greater business community, and even different pockets of areas that you might be in. So let's think about density. Density is a good topic that I learned right now. If you're all right, has anyone looked at the housing market recently? I know y'all are a little young, but yes. All right. So it's difficult to buy a single family home. Why? They're being ruled out a lot. And one of the reasons for that is that we're trying to prevent sprawl. Does anyone know what sprawl is? Yes, cool. All of you have heard sprawl before. Great. So we're trying to build more dense communities. What you're seeing now is that is where we're trying to go. But I feel like the infrastructure for the cities, at least in California, are not quite there to get that. And really understanding that and being able to bring that to the table when you're having a discussion with policymakers or business folks, having that background, because not everyone is a CRE major, even if they are like a developer or they are a legislator. They might have gotten like a different degree or whatever. They don't have those same foundational knowledge points that we're taught here. And I think that's the biggest thing like that I've taken away from. Now, in terms of what I wish I would have known, change is slow. When I was sitting in those seats, I was like, oh, I want to change the world. I want to make this community so much better. Me being from Inglewood in Los Angeles, like I wanted to go back home, change the world. But then I hit the real world and I started working on actual projects. And I realized, oh man, capital's hard. Working with the government's hard. Everything's hard. Everything's freaking hard and slow, but it's worth it. You just got to stay at it. Another thing that I wish I would have known more about in school was so when I was in your shoes, I wanted to be a city planner. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna finish UCDA, I'm gonna go to USC and get my master's, and then I'm gonna be a planner. That was the master plan. It didn't work out that way, and I'm pretty glad it didn't, because I wasn't aware that there's different aspects to this. So me as a first generation low income student at the time, I was like, okay, this is great. And I wish I would have thought about this a little sooner. If you haven't done this yet, think about the type of life that you want to have, and then start thinking of the pathway to that life. Like, how are you actually going to get there? And when I did that, I think I was like in my junior year, and I was like, oh, I already know what it's like to not be comfortable. I want to be on a higher echelon place. And I was like, research the salaries of the jobs that you guys are thinking of going into. Actually pay attention to that and study it beforehand, because that may formulate, if you guys don't have any safety nets, like I know I didn't have any safety net. I was on my own since I was 18. And so if you know that you need to take care of yourself, then be realistic about where you need to be, but find something that you like. So for me, real estate development, I always knew that I wanted to be a business person, and that's why I went into CRD. I started as an econ major, went into CRD, because I wanted to be a business person within the community. And I wish I would have known that there's different subsections within CRD. You don't have to just be a planner or a policymaker. If you want to be about business and create stuff, that's also an option. So if any of you are interested in that, happy to talk after this.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I wish I had known, change is really slow. It can be a little bit defeating when you kind of leave the CRD bubble where we're all really motivated to make change and all really motivated to use our education, our degree for good, and then you come out in the world and you're like, wait, how then do I actually do? So I feel like when I was in CRD, you're talking about these macro level theories of the community in abstract. We're always talking about the community, intersectionality, all of these theories on race and politics, and you're constantly studying it. And then you get outside, and I didn't feel like I had a link between the micro level work that's going on the ground and the macro of CRD. I felt very lost in what there was in between that. So I'm really glad that you have these alumni panels, because I think that's one way that's really helpful, is talking to people outside. And I started working in city government just from, I made a connection with the city manager there, and he offered me an internship in his job, and I just kind of fell in love with it through that. I didn't really know about local government. And so when I was starting working in my internship, I honestly had so many existential crises where I was just wondering, how do we actually do anything that needs to move something forward? How do all of these players interact? There's so much complexity in the ground level politics that affect our communities. And now I'm 3 years into it, and I feel like I'm finally starting to understand how I can be a change maker through that. But it really took a lot of learning the micro ground level work that you don't really get out of your CRD classes. And that's not really a fault of the major, it's a research university. That's what this is for. But I wish I had taken it upon myself to do some of that connection work, looking at what other CRD majors were doing, really taking time to look at people's jobs descriptions and figuring out like what do people actually do, because when I left CRD, I really had no idea how you get that connectivity between the micro and the macro. And I just wish I had taken more time to like get to know people outside in the real world doing CRD work, because I loved the bubble of talking about everything in theory, and like that is my like happy place of talking about that. But I think you mentioned earlier, like you don't really get that when you leave and go into the workforce, especially if you're in a smaller team. And so I bridging that gap, I think, was something I wish I had done during my major.
Advocacy. So my trajectory for community, right after that, I had the internship because of the internship requirement, right? So,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's changed in 10 plus years. It's still there. So through that internship is where the connection of the micro and macro was for me. And it would stay with community and understanding where advocacy was needed there. But what I wish I had already set early on was identifying what were my non-negotiables. Meaning, I can recall many times being in spaces of like, that's not the topic, or that's being interpreted completely wrong, or really honing in on what I will not accept in whether discussing social justice or Black communities or anything like that, and knowing like when to step up or step out. And I had to learn that the hard way, not just through college, but through work and being out there in the community. And even now, now that I know what my non-negotiables are, I know when to introduce, I know when to redirect the conversation. And it's something just as I would take it as like personal growth, right? Understanding that in order to have respectful dialogue with different people is knowing like, okay, I will only be in the space if these things are being met. And if they're not, I'm going to call it out. And if they're not going to be receptive to it, I'm going to walk out. Like there's no purpose of having a discussion if there isn't like community rules of how to conduct each other. So I wish I had that early on. But I think at the same time, I value that learning lesson because it has stuck with me even more. And so there's other things I can definitely call out, but for the purpose of time, that's what I want.
Okay, last question for me. What advice do you have for the students to recruitment?
You have to be a lifelong learner. And what that means is if you really strive to make community a better place, it really starts with you. That's the best way to build community, is to be the best version of yourself, and then you'll see community start. That's more on a personal level, just personal advice. Never stop learning. And there's opportunities to improve, whether it's like a certification or extra classes, go out and do that, because the reality is that there's millions of other people out there competing with you in this labor market. And so I will say this. You guys are in a very particular situation where we're UC Davis students, and that does hold weight in the real world. I do want to remind you that when I was starting off in this world, all I had was like, oh, I have some experience, but he's a UC Davis graduate. And then the people would be like, oh, UC Davis is great. That's a great school, So take pride in the fact that you're getting a great education at a renowned university. And then even more so, like, after you graduate, the job's not done. This is step one. This is literally get your degree, and who came here to be able to get a better job after graduating? Yeah, right? That's the goal? Yeah. So you never stop learning. There's people that are always doing something to improve themselves, and the grind never stops. I'm just going to be honest with you, like, whether it's learning how to be a better change maker, like learning about different communities, learning about different perspectives. Like when I started working on homeless housing projects, I've had to learn a lot about the homeless community, about the inner workings of how city government works to resolve those issues, the flaws of our system. Like if you actually want to make change, you're going to have to learn a lot and just be passionate about making change. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the passion is something that's really real. I started as a neurobiology major and absolutely just did not like it. It was fine. The classes like bio and chem and stuff, but they were just, there was no humanity in it. And so if you found CRD and you love it, like that is wonderful. But if this doesn't feel like it's a good fit for you, you know, you can make change anywhere. Maybe neurobiology is your thing and you can make change there as well. So really hone in on your passions and find what you're passionate about and let that guide you through your college experience. I think also I wish somebody had told me just like to have fun at UC Davis a little bit more, like go out on the quad and enjoy the fall colors sometimes. I come back and I am like, my biggest regret is just not enjoying this campus more. I was way too stressed and I took everything so seriously. And obviously I'm grateful for that in some respect because it led to my career now and I was very successful at UC Davis, but also like I missed out on some elements of just joy and relaxation. And so take time with your CRD peers, you know, maybe you can go out on the quad and chit chat about theory and stuff like that. But just, you know, take it seriously, but not too seriously, and find the balance that works for you. It can be different than your peers and, you know, you don't have to be the same as everybody else, but just find the balance that works for you and really enjoy your time here because UC Davis is such a special campus with such special people and just so beautiful, and it's so short. And we got some ripped from COVID, so I think that's even more so. But really, I mean, yeah, just enjoy it while you can, whether that be through your classes and through, you know, open space and stuff like that. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, oh my God, comment. Same. Advice, I don't, you know, I always struggle with advice because it's just like, well, what are you looking for, honestly? But I guess to my earlier point about being involved with community, the community is messy. I don't know if folks always put community in this umbrella of harmony and like utopia, like Skittles and rainbow kind of thing. And there's like no one's gonna fight. And I've never been okay with that. Like, how are you going to be able to come through ideas and disagreements if you can't have a place to talk about that because you're scared now because we're in this rainbow and Skittle area? How are you going to bring up your disagreement, right? And not be scared of it being pushed back. And that's toxic positivity. And so being okay with that mess, I feel there's a lot of misinterpretation or hesitancy even getting to that place. So when it comes to like being able to have a spaces for discourse, to have disagreements, to talk about ideas, to talk about differences, there's a lot of hesitancy around that. And it's just like, it doesn't have to be bad. It's not bad to be different. Like, it's okay to have different ideas, to interpret something differently. We're all looking at the same page, but we're all seeing it from different angles, from different backgrounds, with different eyes. So community is messy, and it's okay with it. And I think that's why change is slow, because there is this sense of like, we want to meet what everybody needs from this at the same time what everybody wants. And that's what stops for me. But what I've learned working with multiple community members, with our tribal partners, is that change happens at the speed of trust. Well, and if you don't trust the folks that you're working with, do you really think you're going to be sharing truthfully and honestly the information that you know in order to like advance whatever is in front of you? And that stops a lot of things, right? So I learned that from work. I think it can be applicable to anything in life, honestly, even in your family, right? Family's messy. You know, you have your good times, you have your bad times, and that's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
We can come back.
Yes.
If you haven't done so already, I would highly recommend at some point in your UC Davis career, join a club, join some type of organization. Like, it's the amount of clubs and, you know, organizations on this campus is really insane. And I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that, because I know people that graduate that don't have a social circle. Like, they don't graduate with someone that they could go to and, I don't know, grab lunch or coffee with. You know, if you don't have that community, I really encourage you to go out, go to the centers. There's the Chilat Center, there's the EOP Center, there's, what is the other one? Anyway, there's a lot of centers around. there's Greek life. I was in Greek life during my time here at Davis, and if you haven't built that community up here, like for me, I'm from Los Angeles, so I knew some people. I didn't really know a lot of people, but now I've built my network out here in SAC, and I've been able to connect with people regarding jobs, properties, just the news, or just to catch a game and catch up. Like, it's always nice to have that. So if you don't have that yet, start working on that, because you'll miss it when you graduate. Last business. Yeah, Austin. I appreciate that.
Thank you all for sharing so much. I want to open it up to the students here to see if there's any questions or already to comments. Yeah, we'll just holler it out, Caroline. Over here.
Hi, thank you, Chris, for coming. Well, it was really moving. Question for you: have any of you considered going back to school to pursue a master's in CRD or in something else? So that's my first question. My second question, and I'm also from LA, and I'm really tied to it. I'm also a non-traditional student. I'm coming back after a 10-year-long college career, and I have 1 year left. Do you ever, it looks like you're really successful in not being your field. Do you ever wish this is something you could do and take back home to LA and to your area in Inglewood?
Yeah, so the first question, remind me of the first question. I'm trying to get back to that.
The first question was...
the grad school one, yes.
Yeah, grad school.
I've considered it.
That would help.
I've considered it. At the point where I'm at right now in my career, I don't think I necessarily want to go, because if I were to get a master's, I would get an MBA. I think that would probably foster the most opportunities based on where I'm at currently. However, when you go to my first mentor in the development field, he was a Haas graduate. So Haas is Berkeley School of Business. And he told me, when you go into your MBA, you want to have like at least 5 years of experience in whatever field you're in. And if you're going to get an MBA, go to a school that actually has a name, because the MBA and realities, and I've just seen it in the circles, I mean, it's more about the name. It's not so much about like the content. You could learn EBITDA on the field. You could learn NOI or cap rate, whatever it is, all these terms, financial terms. You could learn that in the field. But what you're paying for when you go to a master's program like that is more the network that you're going to be building. You're going to be working with a bunch of already working professionals, hence why you should work a little bit if you want to do that route. So that's my personal answer. That's where I'm at in my journey. If I didn't, if God didn't make things work out the way that they did, and I would have had to graduate and not have the experience I had, then I probably would have gone straight into my master's and gone to be a planner, So that's also a viable option. If you do want to pursue higher education, take into account, like, how am I going to do it in terms of the financials? But once you figure that out, then I would highly encourage it. Like, just be aware of the financials. The financials is what scares me. And that's why I haven't done it. Again, I've been on my own since 18. So if I want to self-fund a master's program, I better come up with $100,000, So, or even better, have your employer pay for it if you get that opportunity. So that's where I'm at with the graduate, with the graduate journey. In terms of going back home, I wrestle a lot with that. I was just in LA this past week. I was looking at the developments going up there. And I would love to go down there. Unfortunately, Los Angeles is not a very good city to develop in right now. What I mean by that, it's very difficult to get anything off the ground in terms of entitlement, in terms of, building departments, and it just makes it very unattractive. The pricing is also ridiculous. Like, why would I buy a starter home for $750,000 in Condon when I can buy a starter home for like $650,000 in Rancho Cordova that's going to give me maybe a little bit more square footage, nicer frontage, and a safer neighborhood? So I am passionate about going back to LA one day and doing it. My goal has always been to go back and start some type of nonprofit or some type of business to help out the community. And I want to build housing out there. However, right now, the laws are not in favor of housing out there. And it's just, unless something changes in the next 20 years and the the barrier to entry lowers than Los Angeles is just not feasible. Like I started my career in the Bay Area doing affordable housing projects, but I knew, and my mentors told me, the for-profit game and the all right, so nonprofits, you use a lot of government money to build. Private sector, you use money from him, money from her, money from me, and big capital partners to build. In cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, these guys are already just billionaires, and they're the big money guys. So where do people like me that want to create positive impact go to? We go to secondary cities like Sacramento or something like that. Build up there, build a reputation. Once you get some muscles on you, then you can think about moving to a bigger city and doing that. If you're going to start somewhere, start small, dream big, and then move up. So that's my answer. Eventually, because my, LA's home, I'm on a DAPA there, and, I want to go back. But for now, I need to stick to the mission. So not yet. Not yet.
So you two on the grad school question?
Oh, sure. I think in local government, depending on, the field that you're specifically in, I think experience is really where it's at. I think once you if you hone in on something really specific, for example, my colleague who is now the deputy director of community development, she was really interested in housing policy specifically, and so she went and got her master's in housing policy. But it wasn't anything that she really needed to progress in her planning career. It helped, but it didn't, make or break in that sense. So I only have really a small sample size of Woodland and the Woodland staff that I've seen. And so in that sense, I see Seminole County too. I don't think a master's really sets you up in the way in some other fields, like say engineering or something like that, where it's a very technical focus that actually gets you a different skill set. So I think if you're considering it, just maybe make sure that the back end of what is this degree going to give you, and how is that going to be different from spending 2 years of workforce to get to a different level. And so I haven't pursued it. I'll eventually want to get a PhD, but that's second career when I'm done with city government and want to actually study it.
Yeah, I've considered it, and I don't know about specifically CRD. I actually have a staff member who is a CRD grad, so I guess I would advise, to talk to them and see what they say about it. I've heard great things and all that. What came to me, so I graduated 2012. I didn't go straight into it. And back then, tuition wasn't what it is right now. I mean, I left with $30,000 in debt. That's only because I had a lot of grants, a lot of scholarships. But I know it's a whole lot higher now. And I think that's the biggest consideration, at least in my viewpoint, right? And going and then comparing it to what you could possibly make in whatever field you're going to go into. So too early into the obvious point of really knowing what is the average for what a policy analyst or the engineering or whatever, to really understand how you're going to balance out what your income is going to be and what your debt is going to be. I paid off my loans, 5-6 years ago. Again, it was $30,000, but with the help of Mary and getting with my partner and figuring out our financials and using both of our, it's a whole strategy, right? Unfortunately, student loans aren't going to go anywhere. And so that was my big, hesitation. I wanted to go into law school about 2 years ago. And even that with $70,000 per year, and it was going to be a 3-year program. And it was going to be not hybrid, so part-time. Also, it was going to be 3 or 4 years. I wanted to continue working and go to law school. It's a lot. And on top of it being $70,000, I just got out of school. It's a lot to really think into it. Considering what I could possibly make as a lawyer, obviously is a lot. But what I had to sacrifice at the moment, I have little kids. And I was I'm not going to take off my evenings in order to do this when I could do it later on. Luckily, I'm a healthy young woman. And I can do it later on when my kids are a little bit bigger. They probably won't need me as much as when they're teenagers. And so those are things I just consider. It's a lot. It's life, right? I always see it as school and any kind of higher education is always going to be there. I really do not care if I'm a 50-year-old in law school it's fine. Like, I have life experience that 20-something-year-olds don't. So that doesn't intimidate me. It's the finances that intimidate me, right? Especially depending on what you want to accomplish in your life. So no straight answer, sorry.
Yes, sure. Yeah, we have close to give it. We have about 3 minutes, so if you could do kind of lightning answers, so you want go ahead and show you.
I'll try and look back so quick as well. But I'm not the CRD major considering it. But my biggest concern with graduating with the CRD degree is like I want to have a profitable career, and it seems to me like you guys had that concern as well. So I'm wondering how you guys have resolved that concern and how you tackle basically.
The name of your degree is not going to give me your money. That's my first answer. How you create profit is that you add value, going back to my original point. So what other degree are you considering?
I'm Korean.
Okay, econ. I started off as econ too with that same mindset. I want to make money. The reality is that you're going to make money if you add value. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got was you must learn and then you will earn. So if you haven't had an internship yet or a job opportunity, start messaging everyone and their mom. Hey, I want 5. That's how I got my job. I was like, I want 5 minutes with you. Let me tell you about myself and let me learn from you. At the very least, I want to learn. Start messaging people out, connect with people, and you'll get far. It doesn't matter what your degree is.
Yeah, I think +1 to professional skills are really what translate into the work environment. And then also, I would recommend like learning about the financials of what a professional salary really means and what it all entails. So like, for example, in local government, your professional salary is one thing, but then you also have to consider that when you're working in local government, you eventually, if you retire, you have a pension, which is a completely different ballgame than if you're working in the private sector and are paying into your retirement. And I had no idea what that meant when I started working in local government. And so sitting down maybe with like a financial advisor and just having kind of that discourse of what does that really mean? So you understand how far your dollar goes, because I think people can have a misunderstanding of just the face value number of what you make per year, but really taking into account for your retirement, all of those other things that are going to set you up for your whole life and, you know, your future if you want kids and your et cetera. So really just understanding what the financial picture of a job is at face value is really important.
I just have more questions. I don't know what you mean by profitable. I think everybody has a different definition by that. So, but if I'm assuming that you at least want to be able to afford your roof over your head and have food in front of you, clothes on your back, you know, it all depends on what you want to go to. I think CRD is such a broad degree that you can really get into. I mean, you have developer, city policy, and then community organizers. And it can be interpreted almost anything. So I don't know what you mean by profitable. If you want to be out there working for the Fortune 500s, I mean, there's ways to get up there, even with any degree, honestly. There is a point that you can learn as much as you can learn, but it's also just as important to know people out there. So networking, working out there, especially what Claudia was saying, that's how I got my job. Like, they trusted me. So they trusted me. They knew how I worked. They knew how the quality of my work. So they trusted me. They easily hired me, and so that's where I'm at. And I started building off of there. You know, I just have more questions for you in regards to all that. I think taking advantage of what you already have, the value that you bring, and where you want to go, and figuring out that path for yourself is going to get you to whatever it's going to make you happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We're at time, so I have to end it, unfortunately. Otherwise, I think we keep going. Just want to thank you all very, very much for sharing your ideas, wisdom, perspective, and you guys really helpful. So, thank you.
Well, thanks. Right. Good job,